Our first speaker today is Chris Layaou. Chris began his career with the Bureau of Forestry in 2011 as a seasonal technician in the Delaware Forest Gap. He then transitioned to become a recreation forester. His interest in fire led him to the Pinto Forest District as a fire forester for the last 13 years. His NWCD qualifications are Incident Commander Type 4, Engine Boss, Crew Boss, Firing Boss, Wildland Fire Investigator, and Wildland Fire Investigation Team Lead. Please welcome Chris Layaou. All right, thank you, Jeremy. Can everybody hear me okay in the back? No? Any better? Okay, we'll try it out. So as you can tell from my background there, I have most of my experience and training in suppression end. So I do have experience on the prescribed fire end of things, but most of my experience, probably 95% of it, is in the suppression end of things. So as I go through my slide, my presentation today, I'm going to try and relate everything from my point of view to the burn boss's point of view, and how things grow and develop over time. But, you know, I'm here to talk about Type 4 incidents. So realistically, how did we get to a Type 4 incident? How do we get there? It all starts with the call, right? So for me on the suppression end, the call comes from 911. Somebody calls 911, they dispatch the local fire department. That local fire department then responds to that fire. For you guys on a prescribed fire, that call comes in from, you know, your holding boss or your FEMO, somebody on that fire that sees a spot over the line, and you engage on it, right? So that call comes, there's a call from both perspectives, the prescribed fire and the suppression side. And I have these photographs up here to show, you know, one's a wildfire, one's a prescribed fire. They're in the developing stages, the early stages of both fires. You can't tell the difference between the two of them, can you? And that's my point here is, you know, you have something that's hot that comes in contact with a fuel bed that's ready to go. And under the right conditions, it's going to burn. And that's what I'm trying to get with these pictures here, that, you know, prescribed fire and suppression, it all starts the same way. So I'm going to bore you for a little bit with indicators of complexity and this and that. But if I go back to that suppression, the volunteer fire department comes out, and if they go out, they respond to a fire, and let's say, you know, they take one truck and 2 or 3 people. They put the fire out, they go back to their department. It's a low complexity fire, right? They're not there very long. There's few people involved. We can relate that to a spot fire over the line. So your holding crew sees a fire, they jump over, they call it into the holding or the burn boss. You know, they go and engage, put the fire out, and then they re-engage on the prescribed fire end. Low complexity, right? That spot fire is taken care of in a small amount of time, few people involved with it. And they're re-engaged on the main incident. So as that progresses, if it progresses, you know, I'm going to jump back to the suppression end. If that volunteer fire department goes out there and they need assistance on that fire, what do? They call for their mutual aid companies to come and help them. They bring more people in, more apparatus. It starts to develop into a more complex situation because you have more people involved, more apparatus, equipment. It's not necessarily the size of the fire that determines the complexity. I know you guys can't see what's on this indicator list, the complexities. Nothing on there describes the size of the fire. It's always, well, who's involved, what's involved. And 9 times out of 10, it's the people. The people are the most complex part of any incident that you're involved in. So as we move along in that suppression end, that fire department pulls in a bunch of other resources and is starting to get busy. A lot of people are moving, there's a lot of moving parts. And then, let's say they don't feel comfortable with the resources they have, so they request assistance from the state. And I guarantee everybody in this room can say that anytime the state gets involved with anything, things get a lot more complex. And it's no different than on a fire. When you bring in a whole nother jurisdictional level of resources, it gets a lot more complex. Now I'm gonna jump back and forth, and I hope you can keep up with me here. But on that suppression or the prescribed fire, that spot fire, your holding crew goes out there, and it's starting to progress. That holding crew can't take care of that spot fire, so you call in for more resources through the burn boss. You pull more resources from somewhere on that prescribed fire, maybe another holding crew, maybe it's your igniters that are right there coming to help you. It's progressing, right? Not necessarily that the fire is big, it's just the behavior is getting more complex. The people, the equipment that you need is getting more and more complex as you move along. So in my mind, my suppression mind, I'm thinking that spot fire is no different than a wildfire as it's progressing in the people that are involved and how you manage them. So as we move along in that, that burn boss has got to start thinking, hey, there's a lot of people over there. Maybe I need to designate an individual that's responsible for that. And I'm not here to talk about like when to determine, when a spot fire is no longer a spot fire. But, as things progress, there's a lot of things that are moving around in your mind as, is a spot fire going to develop into something bigger, like a wildfire? Where's that trigger point going to be? But, in my mind, those contingency resources that are in the plan for only containing spot fires, once you hit that point, to me, that's a trigger point that you got to start thinking of the next step. And, things are getting really complex. So when I look at things like a spot fire on a prescribed fire, I try to relate it to something I'm familiar with. And I think everybody in here is familiar with what an incident within an incident is. And NWCG defines that as any incident that's an accident or a medical emergency that happens on an incident that's involving resource management or the incident management team personnel and their resources. So if you think about it, that spot fire is not much different than an IWI, right? You're pulling resources to take care of something that's happening on your main incident. So you need to have somebody that's dedicated to that spot fire as incident command. And that burn boss is no different than in ICT4. You have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, especially when an IWI command. And yeah, I know spot fire is not a medical emergency or anything, but you're pulling resources off of your main incident. That's what a prescribed fire is. It's no different than any other incident that's out there. It's just a planned incident. So when you start moving in that direction, I would personally think of it as an IWI. Take that process, that process of management. And that's what an ICT4 is. You're not managing the fire, you're managing the people. So I've been often asked, like, what's it like to be an incident commander? So ask yourself, imagine yourself that you're at a child's birthday party and you walk into Chuck E. Cheese. What do you see? You see a lot of faces that you don't recognize. It's loud, there's bright lights flashing, it smells funny. And as you look around the room, there's only actually a few people doing any type of work that actually makes sense. But to make matters worse, the ICT4, you're the guy in the costume, right? You're the guy everybody wants to talk to. So all those faces that you don't recognize, they have something to say to you. Good or bad, they have something to say to you. They want your attention. There's a lot of other things going on. You're trying to make sense of it all. And there's probably a few of them in the crowd that really want to rip your head off. So as the incident commander of a type 4 incident specifically, it's your responsibility to take that chaos that you're looking at and try and organize. So as you're approached by all these people, you've got to try and figure out, all right, what am I going to listen to and what am I going to take serious? Everybody's got an opinion. You know, you look at fire, there's ego out there that it's never ending. And then you throw chainsaws into the mix and your ego inflates even tenfold there. But, you know, it's your responsibility as that incident commander to take all those people, put them in an organized fashion to achieve that end result of putting the fire out or whatever it is. You know, you're there not to fight the fire. You as the IC, the burn boss, you're there to organize everything that's going on. So, I mean, you look at this photo, I'm up there in the middle. I don't have any nomex because I spend my time in that truck. That's my office. It's not often that I get to go out and put the fire out or do much with the fire directly. I'm busy answering every phone that I own and every radio that I have in my truck because, again, all those people want to talk to me. You've got that X on your back, that target that everyone's looking for you and they've got something to say. Everybody's opinion is the right opinion until you make the wrong choice, and you're never going to please everyone. So don't try to. But, oops, sorry. Before I close out here, I want to talk about some of my personal experiences as an ICT-4 on Type 4 incidents. You know, I've been doing this job for, I think I'm going to my 13th season. And it took me many years to feel comfortable doing what I do. It's not something that you're going to take a training and then jump into the seat and run with it. It takes years to actually feel confident and comfortable with doing what an ICT-4 does in the field. And every incident is different. It's not like we're going out there with the same crew, working as a crew on every fire. You know, for me personally, I'm working with multiple different volunteer organizations. We end up using a lot of the same ones to support us, but you know, those beginning stages of fires, it's tough because you don't know the people, they don't know you very well anyway, and you've got to try and convince them to buy into what you're saying. So when I first started, I thought the size of the fire determined the complexity. I thought that a fire that I was responsible for that burned more than, you know, an acre or 2 acres or so, I was going to get questioned hard on why the fire got so big. Over the years, I realized quickly that it's not, the size of the fire has nothing to do with it. It's the safety of the firefighters. You know, putting that fire out, no injuries, no damages incurred to infrastructure, values at risk, any of that stuff. And some of the most complex fires that I've been involved with have actually been the smaller fires, because as I'm arriving on scene, so is every other one of those multiple agencies for the mutual aid resources from the volunteer side. Like, so everybody that I don't know is showing up all at the same time. So I'm trying to, you know, you've heard the term, you know, herd the cats. You know, people are jumping out and they see fire and their instincts are to put the fire out. But, you know, it's my role to organize that and try and get them to at least put it out in an organized fashion. It doesn't always work like that. But, you know, it took a long time to realize, you know, what they're looking for and for them to realize what we're looking for. Like I said, some of the most complex and harder fires that I've had to deal with were the smaller ones. Some of the easier ones have actually been, you know, 50, 100 acres. Because at that point, the fire is getting more complex and, you know, we're able to get in there and control the resources on scene a little bit easier. But once we get to those larger fires, it's, you know, it helps us with that span of control. maintaining the accountability. And accountability is the name of the game for your as an ICP4. Same with the burn boss. You know, you are responsible for every single person that enters that scene. I can't stress the accountability side enough. It's up to you to make sure that everybody goes home safe. I know safety is everybody's job, but it's your job to make sure that they're paying attention to their job. You know, so I'm going to talk about, before I end here, last fall, it was busy for everybody. I thought I got out of the fall without having a larger fire, but we ended up having one, and it was 62 acres, I think, total, which isn't a large fire per se, but it was a complex fire. We had been without significant rainfall for about 3 months. It occurred within city limits of the city of Scranton. So right off the bat, we've got a unionized paid fire department that's responding to a wildfire. So we're working with them. In addition to them, we have volunteer resources showing up on scene. So I've got paid unionized fire department, volunteer department, then the state, which we all know confuses everything, muddies the water pretty good. But in addition to that, we had the fire approaching the Montage Ski Resort. So now I'm working directly with the maintenance staff at the ski resort to gain access, and maybe we're working on it. I thought, you know, you fire up a pump and the irrigation system's flowing water in a couple minutes. It took them about 2 hours to get water flowing in their irrigation system for us. So because of all this stuff going on, the inaccessibility of the fire for vehicle access, you know, I ended up requesting helicopters. So I'm bringing in aircraft on this, making it even more complex. We're bringing in outside resources for support crews to help us put the fire out. It wasn't a single day operation. We spent 4 days there. In addition to those resources, I was able to utilize out-of-state resources that we had working severity for the state of Pennsylvania. So I had an engine from Minnesota, an engine from Idaho, and an engine from Montana. So resources that were not familiar with our fuel type, or our terrain, or any of that. And I'm trying to get everybody organized and work together. In addition to that, we had a high media presence because this occurred in the back, literally in the backyard of some of the local media stations. I had a newly elected he was a U.S. representative show up on scene just to, you know, say hi and bring pizza for everybody. But as the IC, you're accountable for everybody that sets foot out there. So it's not easy to know who's who when they're showing up in blue jeans and a t-shirt, but you know they don't necessarily belong when they're looking around and they're spotless. You know, so the U.S. representative, I didn't know who he was because I wasn't paying attention that closely until someone said, "Oh yeah, did you see so-and-so was here? The politician brought pizza." But, you know, it was up to me to make sure that everybody was safe. We had food, water, lodging for a lot of the resources that weren't from the area. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're in charge of an incident. It's not just the fire. It's never about the fire. As an IC, it's always about the people that you need to be accountable for and organize. So from the burn boss's perspective, the one thing I want to try and get across is, you know, you are responsible for everybody on scene. And I know, you know, we have a burn plan implemented, but don't get away from the resources. Don't forget that, hey, you know, they're your responsibility. Just because they're supposed to be trained in this or that, like, make sure that they're on task so that those injuries don't occur or accidents happen. So I feel like I blew through this pretty quick. I really want more interaction from you guys to ask questions. So, you know, hit me with whatever you've got. I think Jeremy said I've got another 15 minutes up here, so I can stand here and look at you guys awkwardly. I don't care.
I think they took jokes.
Jokes? I don't think so. I like my job too much to lose it over a silly little joke. There.
Appreciate your presentation. I think it was spot on. It's more of a comment than a question. Being an IFC and being a type 2 or type 3 or type 1 burn boss are very similar. So, yeah, when it's not when you lose the burn or if you lose the burn, but it's when you lose the burn where all of that comes into play. Knowing from past slideshows in your head what to do for gone from a controlled fire to initial impact. So your presentation was spot on. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so one of the things for me, I'm always constantly thinking about, the next step. And it's hard going from, let's say, squad boss ICT 5 to that ICT 4 role, because ICT 5, you're still working out there. You're still on the fire line. And it's hard to really plan out the next steps when you're so focused on doing the work that's in front of you. But at the ICT 4 level or the burn boss, you really should be planning things out like, hey, like you said, I've seen this happen before. I know from past experiences that we're not going to catch this very quickly. So what can I pull from that's happened in the past that, we might be able to utilize to get out ahead of this and take care of it. But planning is a huge part of it. Like I said, I had a lot of planning going on in the front seat of my truck for those 4 days, trying to figure out what resources I can demo at the end of the shift today, and then what resources I'm going to need for tomorrow and the next day. And, when it's a dry situation like it was last fall, like you know for a fact that you're not going to go out there, put the fire out, and then go home. You're going to babysit that thing for days on end. And really what helped us limit it only to 4 days was 5 or 6 days later, we got 10 inches of snow that was really, really heavy that put this thing to bed for us. If it wasn't for that snowfall, we probably would have ended up there for another 2 weeks, just keeping an eye on it, making sure, nothing, smoldered out across the lines that we had in place.
Hey, Chris.
One more time.
We're coming off of, I'm from New Jersey, and we're coming off of a pretty busy fire season ourselves in the area. And I was just curious, in your experience with ICT for this season or other seasons, what's one of your biggest concerns for the safety of your crew that you've been experiencing that you might be able to share with us? Or a couple of them.
So I can give you two: the age of our staff and fatigue. Fatigue sets in pretty quick. When it's like Groundhog's Day, when it's, you're in those dry stretches, it's like Groundhog's Day. You're doing the same thing over and over again, especially when it's a dry, duffy fire that you've got to deal with. You're going out there working the duff over and over. But honestly, and I think it's all across the board, like our experienced firefighters that we have aren't getting any younger, and we haven't been hiring anybody up from below, like younger, to learn from them. So once they're gone, that experience and knowledge goes with them. So it's tough to pass that information on when you don't have anyone following in behind. But fatigue is the other one. We're all short-staffed, so when it all relies on a handful of people, it becomes cumbersome. You got to know when to ask for outside help. Is that answer you?
We have another question in the back.
In your Chuck E. Cheese metaphor, most of us will play the majority of our career playing the role of the chaos creating children.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for us to be able to make life easier for the incident commander?
Realistically, follow the chain of command. Not every single one of those people need to be talking to the IC. Like, if you're there with the volunteer organization, work with your chief or whoever has the more experience is like the spokesperson for that department. If you're working on a fire crew, typically they're organized with squad bosses, crew bosses, that kind of thing. So work up with the chain of command and just understand there's a lot going on. I'll be honest with you, when I pull into situations like that and I'm on the phone or on the radio, I will sit there with my window up with people staring at me, and I'll let them stare at me for 10 minutes or so. It doesn't bother me. So, but yeah, just understand what's going on with the big picture.
Yeah, we're working on getting that. I'll check the chat here in a second.
That's just Sam. He knows who I am. He can reach me.
I'll grab Sam's in a second. I had one here. And thankfully, after this past fall, we did a lot of interagency, NGOs doing Midwest wildfires. You mentioned the transitioning from type 5 to type 4, where you can be really operational in the type 5 IC, switching to type 4. Could you touch on the unified?
Well, that was in my presentation, but I wasn't really following my notes, so I missed that one. But yeah, when I get on to any fire that I'm responding to, I'm not taking over. Like, it's not my word against anyone else's. I'm working directly with the volunteer organization that was there from the beginning. So I'm tying in with the chief or whoever was there in the very beginning and had already set up tactics, right? They at least know what the fire is doing. So I'm working with them to kind of see what they need. I'm not there to take over. I'm there to help. So unified command is a huge part of an ICT4. And again, like, working with different personalities, like, that's what I'm trying to do, is work with them and get them the help that they need. We're all there for the same goals, and that's to put the fire out on the suppression end. So yeah, unified command is huge in my role. Where I'm from, I cover Luzerne and Wyoming County. I have 88 different volunteer fire departments that I interact with. So it's 88 different personalities, different people. Overhead's always changing, but it's always the same process when I show up, and that's tying in with whoever was there from the beginning, getting information out of them, and trying to do whatever I can to help them out. And it works both ways.
Always keep one of them in their pockets so they can't run away with them.
And a lot of times they'll try to jump in the woods. I've been down the road where we've been requested to a fire. I show up. The chief or whoever is in charge is nowhere to be found, won't answer me on the radio. So I've actually called 911 and said, can you reach this individual on the radio and have him meet me at his own truck? And they get upset when you do that, but it gets the point across that, hey, we need to be working together, not separate.
Hey, Chris, a question from Sam was, how quickly are you filling those ICS positions during those incidents?
Depends on who I take with me. Sometimes it's pretty quickly. So my standard practice, whenever I go to a fire, I try to take at a minimum 2 other employees with us. So I'm very fortunate where I work. I have force patrolmen that are fully focused on wildfire suppression. So when I respond to a fire, I'm trying to take at least 2 of them with me, so that when I get there, they can jump out of the truck and get me the size up information, see what's going on out there. They're developing a plan on the ground when I'm working the personality aspect of it and trying to work directly with the chief and see what was going on before, and trying to see what they need in addition to what's going on the ground. So I'm fortunate that I have that ability to take people with me, and I understand a lot of Bureau folks aren't necessarily that fortunate, but I'm trying to fill those ICS roles as quickly as possible, at least from the squad boss ICT-5 level. Just trying to get that span of control under control on the fire line sector.
Couple more minutes here. Any more questions? I'll fire up one. Other than operational positions, other than operations, any other ICS roles that relate to a larger slot over or spot that could be utilized?
Probably on the logistics side, you know, you're probably pulling in, you know, dozers or other resources. So you're going to need something set up for, you know, if it's expanding, if it's getting larger, probably, you know, staging area, that kind of thing. Fuel for dozers, if it's not already on scene. Usually when they're there, you probably have a truck with a fuel cell or something like that. But for me, I'm filling every single one of those roles from the ST4 standpoint. I'm doing planning, logistics, operations, finance, even at times. So it does become cumbersome. You've got to be organized and you've got to track everything, document everything. That answer.
All right, last call